Hi Gandhi class, welcome to your second wider curriculum lesson this week. And again, we're going to be looking at history. So our learning objective for this lesson is, can I communicate my ideas and opinions about how Britain was changed by the Industrial Revolution? So here are two drawings. Now, one is just before the Industrial Revolution began, and one is at the end of the Industrial Revolution. And I want you to have a think about what you notice, what is the same and what is different. So on a piece of paper, I want you to make some notes about how Britain in 1750 looked and how Britain in the 1900s looked. So pause the video and have a go at doing this. Okay, so if we have a look at Britain in 1750, we can see lots of fields, we can see some small houses, there's a church over here, and then we've got a big manor house over here. And if you have a look at what the words say, it tells you about what was happening inside some of these buildings. So there was weaving, spinning, a cottage industry. There was poor roads as well, so the roads were probably just dirt tracks. Whereas Britain in the 1900s had factories, they had solid, good roads, they had lots of houses. These are back-to-back houses. And you can see that there are loads of these factory steam, chimneys from factories here as well, producing loads and loads of steam. So already we've got a massive difference. There's more houses, there are more factories, the roads are so much better. You don't have, these industries here anymore in houses, they're in factories now. So well done if you got some of those. So what I'd like for you to do is I want you to watch this video, make some notes and come back to my video when you are done. The link is on the task sheet and I will put it in the description below, and I'll also send it onto our Teams chat as well so that you can have access to it. So pause the video here and go and make some notes on this video. Okay, so what was the Industrial Revolution? My turn, your turn. Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution was a time of massive change in Britain. It began in 1760 and it lasted until around 1900. In this period of 140 years, it was the birth of the modern world as we know it. And Britain changed from a rural country, so that means a country with lots of countryside, lots of fields and things like that, with really small industries, to a really industrialized and wealthy nation. And did you know that the word revolution means a huge change? And the word industry is a collection of companies all involved in the same type of production or business. And if we have a look at this picture here, we can see that this is steam coming from some of those industries that have been created. So Britain in 1750. Before the Industrial Revolution, Britain was an agricultural country. And as I said, that means that it was lots of countryside, lots of fields. People would, have their own farms, they'd have a lot of land. Most people lived in farms and grew their own produce and had their own livestock. By livestock, we mean things like cows or sheep, horses. So animals that they would look after and would produce things for them, such as milk or eggs from chickens, or even their own meat that they would eat. And most industry, so like pottery and weaving, was done at home, and these were called cottage goods. And the fastest way to transport anything was from horse and carriage. So here you can see a horse and carriage. And only a small amount of people lived in large towns. Now, the total population during this time was less than 10 million. And I want you to keep that number in your head, because on the next slide, I'm going to tell you how many people lived there at the end of the Industrial Revolution. So Britain in 1900. After the Industrial Revolution, Britain was a country that had changed hugely. Industry had been transformed by inventions such as the steam engine, which you can see here. And this led to factories being put all over the country. Most people lived in large towns near to the factories where they worked. Transporting people and goods across the country became much faster with the development of canals, roads, and railways. So by canals, we mean, like rivers with boats. And the population of Britain was now around 30 million people. So before it was less than 10 million. And then in 140 years, we had around 30 million people, which is a massive jump. Britain changed so much during the Industrial Revolution that it was almost unrecognisable. For example, a trip from Manchester to London would have taken 4 days in the 1700s, but by 1880, it only took 4 hours. Do you think any of these changes would have led to any problems? I want you to pause the video here and really think about this question and look at these pictures to help you as well. Make some notes, maybe on your whiteboard or a piece of paper, or you can just keep it up in your head or discuss it with somebody who's nearby if they're free. So what was life like during the Industrial Revolution? Huge factories were being built in towns, and this resulted in people migrating, that means moving, to towns from the countryside. People were attracted to the factory work because it gave them reliable pay, so they knew that they'd be paid regularly, and they knew that there was a good chance they would get a job. However, working in these factories was extremely difficult, and people worked really long shifts in dirty, noisy, and very dangerous conditions. At this point, there were not many laws to protect any workers in the factories, and injuries were very common as machines were unguarded. So a lot of the time, people would hurt themselves quite badly. Factories sprang up very quickly during this period. Houses for workers were built rapidly and close to their place of work, and workers often lived in poor quality and cramped housing. These industrialized towns were overcrowded and polluted. So there were lots of people there, and it was a really unhealthy place to live in. And the cheapest type of housing was back-to-back terracing, which you can see here. So you've got a set of houses with a very tiny, tiny garden for somewhere that they can, hang up their washing. And they have something here called an outhouse, which is where they would go to the toilet. And then on the back of this, you've got more housing with very, very small gardens and outhouses as well. So these terraces rarely had clean running water access, and it was really common for illnesses to spread quickly because these areas were incredibly dirty. Britain in 1900 was a very different place. So in the 1700s, a lot of the world had been was completely undiscovered. They didn't know what was out there. But now parts of the world have been explored and had been discovered. The raw materials, goods, and food, such as fresh milk and post, could arrive quickly to people. Some people had made their fortunes on the railways or in industry, so they'd made lots of money. However, many people lived in poverty and suffered from poor housing, poor working conditions, and health problems because it was a very unhealthy place for them to be living. So you've now got 3 activities to choose from. Make sure that you are choosing the one that is most appropriate for you. So activity number 1, I want you to get a piece of paper and split it down the middle. And on one side, I want you to write before the Industrial Revolution, and on the other side, I want you to write after the Industrial Revolution. And I want you to draw a picture of what Britain was like before the Industrial Revolution. So remember, think of things with, lots of fields, not many houses, dirt track roads, horse and cart, lots of animals. And then I want you to draw a picture of what it was like after the Industrial Revolution. So you've got things like factories, lots of roads, lots of houses, and things like that. Now, please, 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 you must label it. So if you've got a factory drawn, like here, you draw a line off it and write factory. And you must do that for both pictures. So pause the video here if you are going to be completing activity number 1. Okay, activity 2. I want you to draw a table out like this and fill it in using your knowledge of the Industrial Revolution. So again, split your page in half and then draw a line across it. And I want you to write what Britain was like before the Industrial Revolution and what Britain was like after the Industrial Revolution. And you can just bullet point things that you have learned. So before you could say things like fields, not a lot of houses, animals, etc., etc. And then what was it like after? Factories, cramped, lots of people, etc., etc. So you can do bullet points for this one. So pause the video here if you are going to be completing activity number 2. And as an extension, I want you to think about how the Industrial Revolution, and I want you to write a sentence, or you could record yourself answering this question. So, do you think the Industrial Revolution changed Britain for the better or for the worse? And why do you think this? And I really want you to back up what you're saying by including facts, things that you have learned from this video. Please make sure you upload your work to Tapestry, and I will see you next time, Gandhi class. Bye.